And now we can navigate to the drop-down menu within component analysis. And it should be populated by the component analysis you just ran. In my case, it's called PCA. So now, if we expand the component analysis object, we can see the 5 components that we just created. To visualize these components a little better, we can navigate to the Tile View tab along the top of the image view. Now you have a couple of options to organize these components in this view. On the far right up here, you can click the Fit All Images on One Page button, which will automatically organize things for you. You can also manually adjust the columns and rows here as well. As usual, you can apply additional on-the-fly denoising. It can also help here to make sure your regions are enabled. So you have 2 options here. You can either toggle the region filling or toggle the region border. And now the one that remains highlighted is of course something we have selected. So let's go ahead and enable the region border. You can customize your view a bit more with these 3 additional buttons right here. Toggle the scale on or off, toggle the color bar, and perform hotspot removal for all M/Z images. And then of course you have 3 additional tools to help you save things: copy to clipboard, save screenshot, and reset your view. So the real power of component analysis, though, is in the scores and loadings plot, which allows you to plot the results of the component analysis against each other. So if you navigate to the scores and loadings plot tab, you can see by default the scores plot is shown. I want to talk about just some general interactions you can have with this plot. Scrolling with your mouse wheel will zoom in on the plot. Holding down the right mouse button and moving the mouse will pan the plot. And you can reset your zoom by clicking this button in the top left, Reset Zoom. Next you have the Save Screenshot button, Copy to Clipboard, a series of grayed out buttons which we'll cover in just a few moments. The next active button is the Show PCA Variance plot. In this plot, you can see what percentage of the underlying data is explained with the components of the PCA. This is only available with PCA. So in our case, we can hover over component 1 and see that 32% of the variance is accounted for in component 1. So we'll toggle this off. Next is the Toggle the 3D Plot button. Using the 3D plot, you can now plot 3 components against each other instead of 2. But the spectra and masses in this plot cannot be selected. That's only possible in the 2D plot. You'll also note when the 3D plot is activated, this third drop-down box in the toolbar becomes active, so you can enable and choose the third component. In the 3D mode, you can zoom again with the mouse wheel and hold the middle mouse button to pan. Holding the right mouse button, in this case, rotates the view. You also now have the ability to record an animation of the 3D plot. So we'll toggle this off. The next button you see is the Use Region Color for Scores marker. This color codes the scores by region. It was already enabled. If I have it disabled, you can see that we just have one large region essentially. So we'll enable this. The next drop-down menu allows the drawing of air ellipses into the plot, and you have the option to set the confidence interval for the air ellipse. If this is paired with the color code by regions option, like ours is, right now we are using the region color code, each region receives its own air ellipse. You can then switch between the scores and loadings plot here and choose which components you're comparing here. Okay, so let's remember what the scores plot is showing us. It's showing the main spatial features decomposed by PCA. So each mark you see in the scores plot represents one spectrum. You can see if you hover the mouse over the mark, it identifies where the spectrum was taken. You can left click to select and hold shift and left click to load the spectrum into the spectrum viewer below. So let's go ahead and select multiple marks. If we zoom in on these outliers down and to the right, we can hold down the left mouse button and select multiple spectra with the rubber band selection. You can then select the remaining two by holding Control while clicking the left mouse button. Now you'll see up top, two new buttons were activated. You can create a new region from your selection by clicking the Save Selected Spectra as New Region button here. Or multiple spectra, like we've just selected, can be loaded to the spectrum view by clicking the Load Spectra from Selection button. So let's go ahead and create a new region from these outliers. Click the Save Selected Spectra as New Region button. Now we can choose where you want this new region to be created. Come up with a name for it. And save. So first you'll note that a new region was created here. Outliers. We can go ahead and navigate back to the tile view and re-visualize our regions. So you can see here where the outliers region was created. And now you have the option to look a little deeper into this data. For example, we could select both the medulla and the outliers region to be active and compare the two. Okay, so now let's return to the Scores and Loadings plot tab. Let's go ahead and select the Loadings plot now. You can do this in the drop-down menu located at the top of the image view. Select Loadings. So now remember, the Loadings plot shows the main spectral features and each mark represents a single mass peak. So in this case, you can hover over the marks and see what peak they represent. Now I briefly covered the fact that you can compare different components, but I just want to show you what this looks like. Again, the drop-down menu here to the left sets the confidence interval for the ellipse that you draw. For loadings, since this isn't spatial data, there is only one air ellipse available. You have many of the same actions available to you in the loadings plot as you did in the scores plot. You can select a single mass in the loadings plot by clicking on a mark. The mass selection you can see is also displayed down in the spectrum view. You can select multiple masses by holding Control and individually selecting marks, or by clicking and holding the left mouse button and dragging. So let's go ahead and select the outliers up here. Now you have two new options. You can save the selected M over Z values as a peak list, or you can create M over Z images from selected values. So let's go ahead and create some new M over Z images from these outliers. You get a warning that 13 images will be generated. And now we can navigate back to the tile view, hit Fit All Images on one page, and you can see the 13 new M over Z images created from those outliers. And that's all I have for today. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for watching. Please open video tutorial 7, Quantitation, to continue.